News that we have today, the International Monetary Fund has approved $941 million lending boost to Kenya with an immediate disbursement of $624.5 million, offering some relief to Kenya as it battles financial pressures. The disbursement under the extended facility, under the extended fund facility, that is EFF, and extended credit facility programs will also be topped by a release of $60.2 million under the Resilience and Sustainability Facility arrangement. And the Executive Board sign-off brings the IMF's total funding commitment to Kenya under all three facilities to more than $4.4 billion. Of course, we know the country is still grappling with acute liquidity challenges amid uncertainty over its ability to access funding from financial markets before $2 billion euro bond matures in June. And this is what we're looking. But even as we get these monies, how then do we utilize this fund? How then do we utilize this fund? $941 million. We have, if you may look at what we have on the front page of the Business Daily today, Israeli Farms SBI is paying 6 billion shillings for Kenya road contract breaches. We also just can slide also to what we have, Railway's tops list of state farms bleeding taxpayers billions. To the two agencies post losses of at least 1 billion shillings. This money is just going to West. And this is what we've been now teasing out with our panelists here. And Engineer Patrick Obath was to tell us more. When we are looking at our roads as well, Roads Annuity Fund, 12.81 billion shillings lost there. We have also Kenya Levy Fund. We have 3.09 billion shillings. We have Road Maintenance Levy Fund, 2.12 billion shillings. Should we be talking about breaches?
Dibal, I find it very strange that a fund, a levy fund, should be in deficit.
Exactly.
Or any of these Kenya Revenue, is it Kenya Revenue?
Kenya Revenue is also
they collect money. How can they be in a deficit? Yeah, and Kenya is spent, so that you can understand they have not been funded. Yeah, Kenya Railways, again, that's a business. The Road Annuity Fund. So all these funds and money collectors or people who receive money that has been collected, I cannot understand how they can be in deficit. The only logical explanation in my mind, or the only plausible explanation in my mind, is that the method of collection and disbursement of these funds vis-a-vis the budgeting processes of those organizations has got a problem. Mm-hmm. So Kenya, and this is where this issue of this road, this contract breach comes in, because the money comes through these organizations. So as the road maintenance, the road annuity fund, they plan to do such work and they get into contracts for that period of time. Mm-hmm. And they're the ones who will pay out that money to the implementers. And it's based on the fact that they've already budgeted, and that budget has been approved for the 3 or 4 years or 5 years. So when it comes now to the time of payment, they do not have that money. Right? So they're sitting with, and this is on the books, it's not actually whatever, on the books, they probably got invoices of so many billions, which they don't have, and they're waiting to be paid by the exchequer. Because all collections go into the exchequer, and then from there, they're disbursed to the right place. Mm-hmm. So all these funds, I believe, that is why they have issues, is because the disbursements from the central government to those funds, having been collected by Kenya Revenue Authority or whoever it is collects them, has not happened. And again, it's an intrinsic problem that we have within the management of funding in this country. And I think all these things we've talked about today mm-hmm. is all around the fact that we are not running the country properly. When you see these kind of things, we are not running the country properly. We should not have this kind of thing happening, because the levy that I pay is based on the amount of fuel that is consumed in this country. Mm-hmm. And we know that the consumption of fuel in this country, especially all these other levies, the road maintenance, the annuity, whatever, all these things are collected per liter of fuel. And the growth in the consumption of fuel in this country is about 3% per annum, and has been for a long time. So you can go to and budget on the basis that the levy will increase by only 3% per annum, and budget on that basis. So this shows an issue of either the lack of management or the withholding of money, which has been diverted to something else. That's all I can say on this one.
All right, I can take it also, you wanted to say something?
Yes,
yeah, I want to just to tease out also, University of Nairobi is on this list.
It's the last one there.
It's the last one. And I was seeing something else, that now universities' employees' arrears rise to 45 billion shillings. I wonder if also your pension
It's affected.
is affected as well. All right, let's hear from Chairman.
Talking of the university, perhaps the three of us at least may be affected as a former staff of the university with a kind of residual interest. But having said that, it's not surprising that Kenya really is topping that list. Could this be the vagaries of the SGR? Is it the loans, what they are paying? If one was to look at their books, was the SGR designed in a manner that it was to make profit and by when? So for me, I think there's a lot that we're not being told about the SGR. We need to unpack. Even though we have the right to information law in place, I think quite a bit is not being told to us. I thought the new in quote Minister of Transport had said he was going to expose the agreement that was signed about the SGR, but that has yet to happen to date. But having said that, I wanted just to make a little correction. The 941M from the IMF, not 1 billion shillings more.
No,
I think it's about 140 billion.
140 billion.
Kenya shillings. So
Yeah.
it's good to note that's way beyond the 5 billion and the others we are talking about. But I wanted to agree with Patrick in one respect: personal responsibility. Whether it's the lawyers who negotiated bad deals, and I don't want to buy the idea that we may not have good contractual lawyers at the AGs. I think there are quite a few. If anything, Kenya is known for is good quality professionals. Is it that we are not giving them opportunity to practice? Are we not putting the right people in the right places? So personal responsibility, whether it's the engineers or the lawyers, it needs to be looked into. I'm glad today we are having a meeting, Diaspora Health Task Team, with the Kenya Medical Association and other professionals in the health sector, the Nurses Association, the Pharmaceutical Society of Kenya, and so on. I think if we strengthened our professional bodies, beginning with APSEA. APSEA is the umbrella body, the Association of Professional Societies of East Africa. If they did their work, the Law Society, the IEK for the engineers, the ISPAC for the accountants, the KUJ, and so on, if each of those professional bodies did their work with ethics and integrity and held to account government in this regard, a colleague was cracking a joke that maybe instead of Azimio complaining about certain things, let the professional bodies, without nuance of politics, be the ones to raise the issues. Can we do things right? Can we upscale the ethics, the standards that are observed, and be true to the call that we have made in whichever profession we are? So the BAL, for me, as a matter of priority, is strengthening professional bodies and making sure that they're held to account, their standards they go by, and they live by it. And then, of course, we recognize merit. That's the only way for me to make sure that we get value for money, whatever the public money goes into.
So now we have, Iraqi, before I go to that next question.
This is a very interesting debate, because we should be asking, why are these agencies making losses? I thought if you look at something like the riverine or the annuity fund and so on, those are areas where there is a lot of demand for transport. People want to travel, people want roads. So why are they making losses? One possible explanation has been alluded by him could be the people who manage them. Are they up to task? Do they have the qualifications? Are they able to act independently beyond the political pressure? I think number two, and my colleague alluded to that, is they collect the money. But do they have the freedom to use that money? Because in government, you usually collect the money, it is taken somewhere, but if you want to take it back, you don't always get it that easily. So maybe some of the reasons why they have deficits is probably because they have collected the money, but they don't have access to it. And that is what is bringing my biggest worry, the single government account.
Yeah, we'll come to that.
Okay.
We'll come back.
But the point is really...
Let me ask you, because I can see also KPLC, and he shouldn't be actually on this list.
I not finished.
You're not finished, okay.
Yes. So one of the questions I've been asking is, why don't you bring in some innovation in these organizations so that they do things differently?
Right.
And Obat said something, but we never took it seriously. Why can't I get a train and put it on the Kenya Railways, railway lines or SGR? If I can buy a car and put it in a road, why can't I do the same with the railways? So, for example, I may find that the railway line from Nairobi to Nanyuki is underutilized. So can I go and put a bogie for carrying cows or for carrying people there? And
so you have a certain amount of wagons.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And that's why whatever people are saying about privatization by our president, it has a merit. Because if we do some privatization, some of these potential, or out of some of the potential of these organizations will be unreached. Because as long as you're in government, you're already constrained. So let's have some privatization in some of these organizations, and let's bring the creative power of capitalism.
Right, so I wanted to just raise the issue of, maybe you can latch on it as well, the KPLC being a monopoly and the exorbitant fees that everyone, or exorbitant rates that we do have, just the cost of power. It sounds, or it looks a bit immoral for KPLC to be here.
I think...
Can I take that one? Because I have a model.
You have a model?
There's a simple model. I mean, it works everywhere. KPLC should be the owner of the infrastructure, just like railway. Yeah, they should be owner of the infrastructure, period. And this is what they call wheeling, yeah? You have your wheeling charges, yeah?
Yeah.
So I, Patrick Obat, will go and buy power from Kengen and sell it to somebody. And then I pay KPLC to take it from Kengen to my customer.
And charge you for that.
And charge me for that. And effectively, I can go to KPLC and say, I want the charges you're charging me are exorbitant. Because if you've got losses of 23%, you've got this, you've got the other, and everything else, they become responsible. That is their cost, not mine. Because I've got to take that power and only lose 2% of it or 3% of it between the point I'm buying it to the point I'm selling. Right? And that is the loss that I'm going to allow for you on your wheeling system. That way, it will bring in a lot of fiscal discipline in that situation. You go to Europe, and I remember visiting, when I was on the board of KPLC, I visited Denmark, and we visited Germany and those places. And what you have is you have 3 or 4 different power generation models, right? In Norway and everybody else, in the winter, they've got plenty of, in the summer, there are plenty of hydro because of the melting snow, right? So that becomes the cheapest source of power. Denmark and a few of those countries, and Norway and all the rest of it, have also got wind, which is cheap. You go to Germany, at that time they had nuclear, and they had all those others. So all of them have got different sources of power, and because that is their main type of power, they are so efficient in producing the power, yeah, even using fossil fuels, that they combined all that into one ecosystem. And you had these, what you call the trunk dealers, who are transferring power from one generator to another across countries. Then when you come to each country, you have an exchange where you go and buy power. So every week you go to that exchange and you buy power, and you have the guys who buy power. That's their job. And then they've got so many customers behind them who they've offered power at a certain amount. And this exchange, the guys go there and they bid. And the guys who have got power all over the place, they come there as well to sell their power. And if nobody takes their power, they have to shut down and the business is done. So KenGen and all these other generators will come there and sell their power at a certain price. Right. Yeah? So it actually brings in a lot of checks and balances into the whole system. And KPLC would also be within part of that. And their job would be mainly the main distributor for everybody, just like Kenya Railways. So KTRACO, KPLC would become all wheeling. That's all they do, right? And then you'd have proper people who do the business of selling and buying power. It would completely transform this thing.
The Bali, it might not be so much a question of privatization. I think it's more a question of commercialization.
Yeah.
And we've seen it work in the telecom sector. Remember the days when we had the monopoly of Kenya Post and Telecom Corporation by declaring interest. I was an employee.
Yeah,
that was one of my earliest employers. But of course, we've seen what has happened with the opening it up. Even though there was a bit of privatization and there's still issues with Telecom Kenya, I think what really made the big break is the commercialization, bringing in private actors. And outsourcing is an aspect of that, and I fully agree in this regard. In terms, why is KPLC both the transporter and the distributor? I think there could be segments that could be outsourced, or alternatively could be opened up to other actors, so that, people who get the last miles, for example. In my view, KPLC shouldn't really be getting into that, because that's not what they're best at. They have the infrastructure. Can they rely on where they have the strongest advantage, their comparative advantage, and we allow the other private sector actors to come in? I think if we commercialized the major areas, particularly in the case of energy, and allowed other actors, government did remove moratorium on solar generators and other renewable energy generators. I think the way to go is allow other actors in the space and outsource as much as you can to other players, allow private sector to be involved.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just want you to say something.
I want to get into this because this is an interesting debate about Kenya Power. It affects all of us.
Sure.
Because you pay for power every day. But all monopolies behave badly. Whether it is KANU as a political party,
right,
whether it is anybody with a monopolist, you behave badly. So it's not an issue about Kenya Power.
Right.
And that's why we have a problem with the police, because they have monopoly of power and so on. So why don't we solve this problem in a very simple way? I like Oba's approach. If you look at Kenya power mix, we have geothermal, we have hydro, we have solar and all that. Kenya Power should simply go to an auction. Go to auction, go to those generators and let them auction that power, and you buy the cheapest power. But now we don't have that flexibility. So if only that was done, then they get the cheapest power, and then the customers benefit. Now they end up sometimes buying the most expensive power. So if that was liberalized, so that we get power to the cheapest, they transmit that to us, we'd be very happy. And that just simply probably means just a change in regulation, a change in law that can be done today. In fact, Kenya seems to be overproducing power. So by extension, using the rules of economics, power should be becoming cheaper, becoming more expensive. So why are we paying the price of inefficiencies? Why can't we change the law? Why can't we get the cheapest source of power? And I like his market. Why can't we have an auction market? If you can buy power from Ethiopia and sell it to me cheaply, why not?
Yeah. The whole concept you are paying for inefficiencies.
That's the problem.
And I think to deal with inefficiencies, it has all these companies, if you look at them, there are a lot of self-interest in them, for certain individuals. And I think the point he's making, what we benefit by going through the private sector platform, all this nonsense of transaction disappears. So at the end of the day, they are responsible to their shareholders. And the next term, the next year, if you're not delivering, you're out there. So you have to deliver.
Sure.
As you say, there's no reason why somebody starts charging levies and in deficit. It doesn't make sense, really. There's no point that Kenya Power is there and it's you're managing it. So, and you also go to leadership. Let them move. Remove this, my cousin, my whatever, managing it all that. At the end of the day, they're the guys who know how to do it best, do it. If you go to other parts of the world, which are civil in terms of managing institutions, people use train. I would be very comfortable to use a train,
right,
than be locked up than in a matatu. I would like to transport my goats all the way from Isiolo using the Navy. But you look at those rates, and I can understand, I don't think it has nothing to do with SGR. You can see all those dead rail lines. They're not being used at all. And the biggest challenge we had with SGR was actually the guy who made tires for lorries. He didn't want SGR. Because what does it move? It removes the business from the road. Not realizing, if I transport my goods and I take a train,
right,
it's much safer and you can transport so many goods at a time.
And your other cousin will benefit.
So the whole idea of all this is about it's all nonsense of stealing.
All right.
Transaction costs
Paying for inefficiencies, and I wanted just to ask, maybe now we can gravitate the discussion to the Treasury single account and how that is bound to work. Because you say, most of these parastatals, yes, they make this money, but once it goes to the exchequer,
right,
if they come back, that's a different kettle of fish altogether. So what will happen with the Treasury single account as it is? Now we have everything going to one account, consolidating the funds there. The disbursement of it, will it be a challenge? Or maybe if you have an inkling of it, you can give us a broader understanding.
We haven't actually seen the regulations and everything else. I think this is just it's a direction that the government wants to take. But imagine this, and this is just I just want to imagine.
This is imagination, okay?
Yeah? So if I have a company, say I have a company called Obath Inc., and I have branches around the whole country, and I said, fine, all that money will come into one central account, and I'll only have one account on which I'm going to pay all the expenses of
let me just part in a bit and try and adjust your mic a bit so that it doesn't rub on your shirt. Yeah, just look at it. Yeah.
Yeah, so that, and I won't be active then. I'll
Still. just be still, because it's rubbing a bit. Yeah. So I think
getting that emotional.
But imagine Obath Inc. had 40 branches in the country, and then I had one single account in which I'm going to pay for all the operations of those branches, right? There has to be some really seriously agile processes in that company for that to happen. Because if the petty cash that is required in Kisumu has got to get out of that single account, so those guys can go and buy their tea and coffee, the little things like that. I'm just taking to the ridiculous, yeah? But it means that the system has to be set that when a requisition is made, it can be processed and paid as quickly as possible.
Right.
That's the key question mark on the single account. If it means that all government disbursements are going to come from one place,
oh no,
yeah, then the systems for disbursement have to be completely world class. And then the requisition for disbursement has also got to be world class. So that when you have a process that a cost is required to be incurred by, say, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or no, let's take the Ministry of Cooperatives somewhere in Turkana, and another one needs to happen somewhere in Voi, yeah, and they need that money within 2 days. You've got to be able to make the request and get it within 2 days. And that way then we'll be able to function.
Right.
But I think the devil will be in the details. I mean, it's a great idea to put it there so that everybody, you have complete visibility and there's traceability of all the expenditure by government, right? So that the issue that you give money to a particular department and then they can go and mess around with it and the tenders that, the contracts that are being paid are being messed about. If it comes to the center, you can compare the contracts that are being done by Ministry A and Ministry B and Ministry C. And you can see it there and therefore get efficiencies. So there are potentially some good outcomes from a single account, but the devil will be in the details.
But given now that we've had exchequer, the issue of disbursement to the devolved counties, the issue of capitation, the delays, even I think for the last 16 years, this is the first time that pensioners of government have not even received their pension. There has been delays even to that particular effect. Do you think the dead hand of bureaucracy will also sort of be a chokehold on this process when it comes to that particular single account?
I am not sure, but in the past there was the Exchequer and Auditor General's Act, which said all government monies, no matter how they were collected, had to go to the Exchequer first. They wouldn't be used at source of collection. Even though I remember in a ministry I participated before, a battle I did for the longest with the ministry was there was money that the leadership had mechanisms to take, and we kept saying no. A decision given by even a head of public service could not override the law, because the law was very clear. All the monies collected for government have to go to the Exchequer first. let them be disbursed from the exchequer to the spending agency. So when we talk of the single government account, I'm really not sure what has changed over time. But it's always good to look at both sides. The e-citizen platform, when there were payments all around different platforms, if what's being reported is right, that every day we are making 3 billion shillings or something, maybe doubling or trebling what's being collected by government. So sometimes centralization is good, but it must be looked within a context. In telecom, we say all good things come into two. You don't want to have a single point of failure. If there is going to be problems of graft, of misuse within one centralized place, it could be problematic. But I would want to believe that the crafters of this single account have looked at all the parameters and they think it's the best interest of the country. But due process for actualizing it needs to be in place. And I think insisting on that there are rules and compliance with the law, because in some cases our problem is not that we don't have laws and regulations, but to what extent are they complied with?
Mm-hmm. Right. Iraqi, you wanted also to comment on the...
I think I would see this single account from a political perspective. If you look at the Kenyan politics, there has been a very concerted effort to control the political system, make sure that all the parties talk the same language. You have seen the government meeting some opposition and so on. So I would probably bring the same to the new system. The government want to control the revenues, which is good because they're arguing that they will stop any leakage. But my biggest problem is it's always easier to pay than to get a refund. In fact, try and go to even private companies and pay by card. And then you tell them, I don't want this item. It becomes a process to get the money back. So in the government, the bureaucrats will come in. How do you get money to the people who need it? So my biggest worry is that some government entities make money, others make a loss. And there's sometimes some cross-subsidy. So I might be in a loss-making company or government entity, but I have a lot of power. So I'll be able to get money from a profit-making entity, and the money is diverted to the other person. So the question is, how do you make sure that the bureaucracy does not clog the system? Because I'm seeing a case where companies will be left without operations because they cannot get money from the government. Mm-hmm. And that's why agility from Obath comes in. It's very easy for me, for example, to pay money using 22222. But is it easy for me to get the money back if I want to buy supplies and so on? So maybe when the regulations come out, when we see how much IT is in that system, maybe we can conclude whether it's a good or a bad system. But I have my fears that it will be clogged by bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy at the end of the day.
Anyway,
back to this particular list, because I wanted to know, and we were talking about cost of power. There's one agency that is missing here, and I wonder how also they're making revenue. The Kenya Space Agency. We have a Kenya Space Agency, don't we?
Yes.
It's missing from there.
Yeah, because I'm inclined to wonder how are they making the money. We had Taifa Mission, and Taifa Mission was also very interesting. That we saw Taifa Mission, that particular satellite that was being launched from the USA. So I failed to understand why we were actually launching it from, because we don't have the necessary capacity.
Now, if you sat down, there are a lot of things missing there.
Anyway, so one of the things that I wanted to ask in light of that, because when you're talking about cost of power, and I was reading from some scientific publication that even as we are going to the space, there are now plans and there's technology on how you can harness power from space and bring it back using, I don't know if it's a satellite technology or whatever, they're gonna, it's just using the same model back to your country that is clean, right? We're talking about renewable energies as well. Is this something that now the space agency should also be thinking about, Patrick Obath, because this is where technology is heading to? And how are they generating the revenue?
Yeah.
How are we are the people who are paying their space agency, but how are they generating the revenue?
There are certain times when a country has to invest in enabling technology to come. And you won't make any money out of it yet. But you've got to, first of all, understand the technology. You've then got to put in the structures that are going to allow you to begin to consume the technology, and then eventually get to a point where you are actually manufacturing the technology and moving forward. Those are the spaces that you get into. And something like the Kenya Space Agency, the Kenya Nuclear Authority, whatever, Kenya Maritime Authority, yeah? Kenya has no ships. You go to Maritime Authority, yeah? Kenya Shipping Agency, sorry. Yeah, Kenya Shipping Agency.
We have even KMA.
Kenya Shipping Line, sorry. Right? Kenya Shipping Line has no ships. We used to have ships, by the way, years back, if I remember my early days working in Mombasa. So Kenya used to own ships.
Well, but to explain why the name remains, because we used to have ships.
What happens is you develop the regulations and the rules and everything else that will allow you to operate in that sector. Then you partner with somebody else, and if you're going to partner with, say, NASA or the Japanese or somebody like that, the Kenya Space Agency is the one that will do that partnering with those organizations, and you then begin to get into technology agreements. And you go step by step. But you need to have a body in Kenya that will be the one to go to for that particular thing. Hence, the Kenya Space Agency, I think, is a good idea, but it's got to have a vision and a long-term idea of where Kenya wants to go in terms of space. I don't think we're going to be launching rockets in Kenya in the foreseeable future, but we can begin to be consumers of space technology. So the sending of something to the States where the launching capacity is and the launching costs are better than doing it in our own San Marco here in Kenya, right? Which is we have a launch base here for the Italians.
Oh, there's a launch base here?
Yeah, there is.
Where is it?
San Marco in just north of Malindi.
Okay.
Just north of Malindi, we have a thing, and they tend to launch weather satellites and stuff like that from that place. Yeah.
Okay.
Small payloads. Yeah. But ours was just a small box, and that one can only is better launched where you've got somebody whose payload is built of smaller boxes, rather than trying to launch that box in a very expensive station here. So going to the US was right. So Kenya Space Agency is absolutely the right thing to have, right? And it will guide our journey into the understanding and the use of space in the future, including what you asked earlier on about energy. What they're looking at in terms of energy in the future is that you will take up all these solar panels and whatever it is, and there's all sorts of cosmic particles up there that are moving around that you can probably also utilize to generate power. And these are things that we don't know yet, but they're sending up, I think the research center that is in space at the moment is doing a lot of activities in terms of understanding what you can do out there. And once you generate it, you can concentrate it in a beam and then bring it to a receiver on Earth, and then and then it's converted back into power that you can use. Yeah, that technology is already existing. But then what you've got to do is to make sure that you don't have planes flying in that space or whatever it is, so that they might get zapped by that thing. So
actually, the
whole utilization has got to be very clear, and the rules have got to be developed. Hence, Kenya Space Agency will be part of the bodies globally that will do that kind of thing.
The last launch to the moon, they were using that kind of technology into the atmosphere, but I think in additions, they had to recall it. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I thought you were talking about the power generation. There is an innovator, Zimbabwean, who has got this electric car and is firing choppers. I think it's been doing rounds on the social media and requiring protection. I think innovation, the role of innovation and research is so key. Everybody would identify that. I think the idea of the Kenya Space Agency was timely, and there have been efforts, and Kenya has launched satellites. There is the big satellites and the small micro or mini satellites. Kenya has got such talent. I came across a young man here who went to India. Incidentally, he happens to be an economist, but he learned how Indians make mini and micro satellites. And he's been in that space. He's been talking to people from different parts of the world, Panama, Turkey, and so on and so forth. I think if we paid more attention, AU did resolve, I think about 10 years ago, that each member state was going to allocate 2% of its national budget to research and innovation. So far, I think it's only Rwanda which has achieved it. Kenya is trying. I think we have gotten to about 1%. But the role of innovation, creativity, and research needs more emphasis. And even in the days of now that artificial intelligence is becoming more relevant, and even in other sectors, whether we are talking of agriculture or medical and so on. We need a bit more innovation. I came across a lady, geologist. I think she's reputed. She's just retired from the Ministry of the Department of Mines or Geology. Reputed to be one of the topmost blast explosives expert. When you are in mining space or quarry or underground, this is reputed. I think she was a chief inspector in the ministry. And I was asking, how did you get these rare skills that is so much needed? And maybe this is a challenge to education of the professors in the room. To what extent have we aligned our training, curriculum, and research in the areas that need to make the most, generate for us the most of the wealth that we need to develop our country? Mm-hmm. So I think focusing on the priority areas and giving more attention to research, science, STEM, and particularly science and innovation would be a necessary requirement.
Right, excellent, Rakib.
This is an interesting debate because I have a lot of interest in space as one of my hobbies. And I thought you would see it in a bigger perspective that one, by focusing more on space, we generate interest in students in high school, university, and so on to pursue science. And that has spillovers. I remember when the Soviets launched the artificial satellite, how the Americans reformed their education system. So we probably need to reform our education system. Sputnik, to make sure that students think about science. Number two, I thought there are a lot of exoplanets. By about 10th of January, we had about 5,600 exoplanets. So we need to study them because one day we might find some of them are inhabited. So I believe by about the year 2100, some of us will be going forward in one of the exoplanets. So it's also an area of curiosity. And three is an area where we might start mining. We might start mining the moon and those asteroids and so on. Already we have got some species or some particles from one of the asteroids. And we never know. Some of the rare earth metals that we use for making car batteries and so on may come from there. So it's a very good reason to focus on that area. And he said that before we make it commercially viable, we need to inject some investment. And I guess that's what Space Agency was doing. And finally, I thought you should be asking why we don't have Kenya's private entrepreneurs getting into that space. Elon Musk has done so well, and other guys in that space. So we need Branson as well. Yes, we need maybe after this meeting here to form a company to start focusing on space. Right. We launch a satellite and get paid for it. We start mining the universe.
First feed the Kenyans.
India doesn't have enough to feed his family, but they are on the moon. So we must look at the spillover effect.
And maybe we have brothers there as well. We can see the Congress has been interrogating some of this UFO.
Yes.
They're saying they are what? Ultra-terrestrial beings in the spaces as well. But even as we're winding up, you want to say something?
Hope they not call me.
Yeah, I was just saying, talking of which, I think during when Kenya was celebrating 50th birthday, and there was this young person I'm talking about who makes mini satellites, was saying instead of having a chopper carrying the Kenyan flag, how nice would it have been? And at that time it was costing only $1 million to launch a Kenyan flag on a Kenyan microsatellite. I mean, it would make more sense. And of course, for big companies that want publicity, the guy tried to get private sector to invest in it. The point Professor here is asking, why is private sector not participating? Let's be long-term futuristic. Professor of Vision 2030, even as we deal with the basics, we cannot overlook science. In fact, talking of nuclear energy, many may not be aware.
I knew you were going there.
Many may not be aware of that. Then number 2 or 3, the director of International Atomic Energy Agency is a Kenyan, Professor Shaukat. So the capacity is there, both within the country and outside. Why can't we use the skill that we have to make sure that we're also part of the innovation?
Indeed. And of course, Shaukat had the privilege of having him as a panelist before.
Right.
So I'm really proud about that. I just want us to look at this editorial cartoon because we're talking about the shilling. And we can see the executive is really trying hard. He seemed to be very sick, as it were. You were the one who was talking about being in the HDU, right?
Who is now?
Now it is going to the ICU. Yeah.
Who is this in the middle?
You can't. It's the shilling.
Yeah, but there's a guy there. Is that a Duge or who? There's somebody that may be heard by the deputy.
The shilling is sick. We've crossed over to the 160 mark as it is right now. 200 shillings to the sterling pound.
Right.
I think things are looking dire as far as we've seen the Treasury toing and froing on this issue that they're not going to make any intervention. They will let it just course correct itself. Again, they come and say, oh my, we have to come and salvage the shilling. So them being proffered here by the executive, where are we headed with the 160? What are we bound to expect? We have also...
the rune has gone to 941. It was 900, now 941.
941, yes. Now we have 941 and the shilling also. We'll pay with this shilling. I hope even that one has been budgeted.
You know the trajectory of the dollar when it's in free fall, which is what I hear central bank is saying, we'll let it come to the right level, which I think in financial terms is doing free fall. That it just finds its own level. It's not the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
It affects the value of the dollar affects both inflows and outflows, and it affects the economy in a pretty significant way. Almost 8 years ago, when I was still active in the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, we used to sit around and with the various people in the money work and said, what is the target value of the dollar that will work best for everybody? And this was from both importers who are bringing stuff in and exporters, because you've got to look at both of them. And we'd discuss and say, fine, I think, and at that time, I mean, believe me, it's almost 10 years ago, we were talking in the 80s to 100s at that time. We are double in 10 years. At that time, we are saying, fine, we need to move it from 90 to 93, right? And that will still be comfortable because there's a pressure to move it upwards, but how far up? And therefore, then the government and all the agencies would go and make that happen. And it was all around, holding dollars, doing whatever it is, making sure that dollars were available so that the government then makes sure that the exchange rate is managed properly in order to have a balance on the economy. When you put it in free fall, right, then the economy is going to be skewed in the wrong way. Okay, it may find its level after 3-4 years because there are so many external factors that also you have no control over that can influence this. Yeah. And currently, that is what is hitting us. The exchange rates elsewhere have gone up. The interest rates there elsewhere have gone up. So you're getting capital flight to those areas which are more secure, more policy, steady policy, and people can make money there. So the NSE is struggling. The people who have got dollars are not letting it stay in the bank. They're saying, these are my dollars, do not sell them to anybody, right? They are mine, I'll want them. So the banks don't have that freedom. So with all those things happening, obviously this amount that we are seeing in terms of the value of the dollar is just going to go up, 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 up. And even if more dollars are brought in, the amount that the government needs to be free, that they can play around with, compared to the ones that are coming in because of Patrick Obad selling vegetables in whatever, is not going to be enough to be able to sort of ensure that we are able to pay for for our trade.
And I think it's interesting. Last week I was in the bank and the dollar was not quoted there. There are all other currencies, but the dollar was not there. And this is some antidote in my own thinking. And just take Gong Road or Kiambu Road. What do you see? Second-hand cars. It's like a business everybody. All those vehicles are being imported in dollars. So there are certain things that government can really say deliberately. This free fall is absolutely nonsense. And saying that the Kenya shilling has been overvalued. Really. I think that's another story we need to talk with this IMF and the staff. But the moment you see, if you look at even how you define GDP, export and imports, it's actually exports minus imports. If you look at the equation, imports on the rise. So there's something we need to manage that dollar in terms of, and this keep saying this, are we producing more so that we can export? Right. Or are we a country which is importing.
This is where we're looking to the diaspora right now.
Yeah.
They can bring in the dollars.
The
Even as
That's
one,
not production.
briefly, yeah.
Diaspora is not production.
My dietitian told me of everything there must be moderation. Don't take too much. I think there has to be a balance.
Yeah.
Even if you're avoiding meat or you're going vegetarian, there needs to be a little bit. I think the free fall, on the one hand, arbitrarily holding Kenya shilling high, in my view, was not right, but neither is a free fall. So there needs to be a balance, because as the dollar falls, what it means when we come to paying our debts, we have to tax, we have to collect more tax, we have to tax the taxpayer more to pay for those debts. So clearly, and in the terms of course, for the diaspora, some may be happy when you send now $100, it fetches more to your family. But what's the purchasing capacity of that money? I think it's not healthy when we allow the free fall, but of course we also need to put incentives for diasporas to bring more of the dollars. There is already the investment flight. I think, is it 30 or 40% of investments at the security exchange that has gone out because the value of your investment in Kenya, the NSE, has gone down over the past 1 year or so. So it's not healthy. All these factors need to be looked together. Yes, allow it some latitude to move, but moderate it.
Thank you. All right.
I think
your closing remarks.
the big question we should be asking is, why did G to G work? We are told G to G will help stabilize the value of the Kenyan shilling. Why has the interest rate rise not tamed the depreciation of the Kenyan shilling? So we should be asking, what is this indivisible force? But to be fair to my colleagues, government intervenes in the market when there's a market failure. Could there be a market failure in the value of the shilling? Let's look at that.
Thank you. Thank you. Gituro Waneno, your closing remarks.
Yeah, my closing remarks, the professionals. Let's get out. We need to save this economy, not going to the street like how we are doing. Professionals, they are being called. Kenya Association of Manufacturer, KEPSA.
Right.
Let's take it.
Right. Patrick, about your closing remarks.
I think I'll just put the same thing. Let's professionally manage our economy.
Absolutely.
Add to it ethics
All right.
and values.
Professionals have all those.
We go to space.
All right. Whatever the shilling that is being taken to, I don't know which particular ward. We pray for it, that it will stabilize, and of course, it will bring some